Hi guys, it's Hannah here from Squire Shelf. Doing another video today. I want to carry on reading a few more chapters from the Lady Vanishes by Ethel Lina White, because I realise it's been quite a long time actually since I created a video, and I'm here in a different setting. So this is my bell tent, and my parents very kindly have bought for my 30th birthday, which is next Friday, but it came early and I've put it up and I've been sleeping here ever since. I wanted to talk briefly at the beginning just a bit about why I haven't been filming. So it's been about 6 weeks, I think. It's over a month. I've been really enjoying, before that, making videos for this channel, and I have ideas of videos I want to create. So it's Pride Month this month, and I've been reading, I generally read quite a few of LGBTQ books. So I'm going to do a video about the ones that I've read and I want to read, recommendations. I've also got various other reviews of books that I want to do, some Ethel Lina White, some lots of other mystery fiction writers and other writers that I will be doing videos of. But yeah, it's been a while. I think to begin with, I was just a bit down really, just about what's happening with the coronavirus, so COVID-19, and I have a few vulnerable family members, so I've just been kind of really worried about them. And I think I am an introvert, but I'm quite a social person. I like being around people. I love, seeing my friends, spending time with them. And I know in comparison to everything else that's going on, it's, very minor, and I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that, yeah, I was just feeling a bit down. And then I kind of became even less motivated to really do very much when I found out. So there's a personal project I've been kind of working on for just over a year, like planning it, saving. It's just for my kind of future independence, and I'd got a harsh blow that I don't think that's going to happen anymore, and that happened a while ago. So I did spend kind of a week not really leaving my bed, to be honest with you, or doing anything. Yes, and then after that, the really unfortunate, harrowing, awful death of George Floyd in the United States, and the Black Lives Matter movement that came out of that, which is really great, really inspiring. I just felt I really wanted to take time to focus my energy kind of educating myself more, so learning what it means to be kind of more of an active ally, reading. I love James Baldwin work, so I've been reading some more of that. Today I've actually been reading, I really like Angela Davis, so this book is called Woman, Race and Class. I'm about a third of the way through this, and I just felt, I don't know, I felt it was a bit inappropriate maybe before now to be filming something that was, something that wasn't related to Black Lives Matter. I don't know, I just felt like it was frivolous or something that it wasn't the right time for, really, I think, reading the book. And it's obviously written in the 30s, and I saw some really great Instagram and Twitter kind of responses of people who are kind of in the vintage community. So I've said before in videos, I like dressing in particularly 20s, 30s, 40s outfits. I like doing my hair like that, not today, but I do, and going to events, and I've said obviously I love kind of the golden era crime fiction that was written, but that doesn't mean that I believe in kind of vintage views on race, religion, sexuality, gender, any that form of oppression, of racism, of sexism, all of it. I really am. I'm a big advocate and big supporter of Black Lives Matter, and I believe in complete equality for everyone, regardless of who they are. So yeah, I saw some really good responses about that on Instagram, saying that just because I like this fashion or this architecture or this style doesn't mean that I'm not incredibly supportive of what Black Lives Matter stands for, which I am. But yeah, so I've been feeling a bit better this week actually. I've been watching a lot of documentaries about, particularly actually around race and the struggle of black people particularly in America and the United Kingdom, is kind of what I've been watching and reading. And there's some great documentaries, there's some great YouTube videos, there's some incredible books that I've been reading and just kind of learning. But I thought today I would start filming again and just read the next few chapters of Lady Vanishes, and in the next videos I'm hoping to do reviews, and as I said, the Pride Month video. Yes, I was going to do this video actually going for another walk, and then it just started absolutely pouring it down, as it does in the summer in England. So I thought I would come in to my tent. At some point I will do like a little tour of the tent, but it's not finished yet. I'm waiting on the matting and some final massive bean bags coming, and I hope the rain's not too loud. It's a lovely sound though. So yeah, I'm really enjoying being in the tent. Oh, that's reminded me actually, I want to do videos well about, so the three main areas of books that I've been reading recently are nature books, because I'm obsessed with kind of getting back outside and being in nature a lot. I found for my mental health personally, which I kind of struggle a bit with anxiety and depression, that it's the best place. That's why I think I just love this tent so much, and I've been sleeping in it for a week now. It's wonderful. Waking up to bird song. So yeah, sorry. Nature videos. I've also been reading quite a bit of 1920s, 1930s kind of mystery fiction, quite a bit of P.G. Wodehouse as well, because it's just so funny when I kind of want to lighten my mood. And then 4 LGBTQ books I've been reading, and then also particular books associated with race and Black Lives Matter. So those are kind of my 4 areas. So I want to definitely do videos about those as well. But yes, the Lady Vanishes. Sorry, this is a very long introduction, but I thought I'd do a bit of a kind of update as well on where I am. But I'm feeling a little positive at the moment. I'm back at work tomorrow, and I'm going to do some really important work with the National Trust I work for. This video is no way affiliated with them. But yeah, I'm just in a better place, so I thought I could get back to doing these videos, which I really love doing. So, The Lady Vanishes. It has been quite a long time. I apologise. We're up to chapter 13. So, chapter 13 is A Dream Within a Dream. At first, Iris was too surprised to protest. She had the bewildered sensation of being the one sane person in a mad world. Her astonishment turned to indignation when the professor caught Hare's eye and gave a nod of mutual understanding. Then he spoke to Iris in a formal voice. "I think we may accept that as final. If I'd known the circumstances, I should not have intervened. I hope you will soon feel better." "We'd better clear and let Miss Carr get some quiet," suggested Hare with a doubtful grin. Iris felt as though she was being smothered with feather-bed opposition. Controlling her anger, she forced herself to speak calmly. "I'm afraid it's not as simple as that. As far as I'm concerned, the matter by no means ended. Why did you imagine I'm telling a lie?" "I do not," the professor assured her. "I'm convinced it is your mistake. But since you've raised the point of fairness, you must admit that the weight of evidence is against you. I have to be fair. Can you explain why 6 persons should lie?" Iris had a sudden flash of intuition. "I can't," she said, "unless one person started the lie and the others are backing her up. In that case, it's only her word against mine. And as I'm English and you're English, and this concerns an English woman, it's your duty to believe me." As she spoke, Iris challenged the Baroness in an accusing stare. Although the personage heard the charge with complete composure, the professor coughed in protest. "You mustn't confuse patriotism with prejudice," he said. "Besides, your insinuation is absurd. What motive would the Baroness have for telling a lie?" Iris's brain began to swim. "I don't know," she said weakly. "It's all such a mystery. No one would want to injure Miss Froy. She's too insignificant. Besides, she was proud of having no enemies, and she told me herself that the Baroness had been kind." "What have I done?" asked the Baroness blandly. "She said that there was a muddle about her place and you paid the excess fare for her to travel in here." "That was charming of me. I'm gratified to hear of my generosity. Unfortunately, I know nothing of it, but the ticket collector should be able to refresh my memory." The professor turned to Iris dutifully. "What am I to do?" he asked. "You are making things rather difficult by persisting in this attitude, but if you insist, I will question the man." "I'll dig him out," offered Hare. Iris knew that he wanted a chance to escape. She felt that his sympathies were with her while he withheld his faith. After he had gone, the professor began to talk to the Baroness and the doctor, presumably for the sake of further practice. Suspicious of every glance and inflection, Iris believed that he was explaining the delicacy of position and stressing the absurdity of the charge, for the Baroness looked almost as benevolent as a sated tigress that kills just for the sport. She was glad when Hare, his rebellious tuft sticking out like a feather, battled his way back down the corridor, followed by the ticket collector. He was a sturdy young man in a very tight uniform, and he reminded Iris of a toy soldier with 2 blobs of damson-covered of damson colour on his broad cheeks and a tiny black wax moustache. As he entered, the Baroness spoke to him sharply and then waved to the Professor to continue. By the time Iris's nerves were shattered, she was so sure that the ticket collector would prove another victim to mass hypnotism that she was prepared when Hare made a grimace. "He's telling the old story," he said. "Of course he is," Iris tried to laugh. "I expect he was one of her peasants. He looks bucolic. She seems to own the lot, including you and the Professor." "Now don't get het up," he urged. "I know just what you are feeling, because I've been through this myself. I'll tell you about it if I can dislodge this young lady." The little girl, who'd been making precocious eyes at Hare, responded to his invitation to move with shrugs and pats of protest. All the same, she reluctantly went back to her original place, while he squeezed into the corner originally occupied by the elusive spinster. "Cheer up," he said. "Unless your Miss Froe is invisible, other people in the train must have seen her." "I know," nodded Iris, "but I can't think. My brain's too sticky." The Professor, who was just leaving the compartment, caught the drift of Hare's argument, for he turned back to speak to Iris. "If you can produce some definite proof of this lady's existence, I'm still open to conviction, but I sincerely hope that you will not expose us and yourself to further ridicule." Iris felt too limp for defiance. "Thank you," she said meekly. "Where shall I find you?" "In the reserved portion." "We're sharing a bunny hutch," supplemented Hare. "Didn't you know we're rich? We started a prosperity chain." "I hate that man," burst out Iris when the Professor had gone. "Oh no," protested Hare. "He's not a bad old fossil. You've got him scared stiff because you're young and attractive." Then the grin faded from his lips. "I want to bore you with a true story," he said. "Some years ago I was playing in an international at Twickenham. Just before the match, both teams were presented to the Prince of Wales, and he shook hands with all of us. Well, after I scored the winning try, I had to slip out. Later on, when I was fairly comfortable in a private ward at the hospital, the nurse came in all of a flutter and said there was a special visitor to see me." "The Prince?" asked Iris, trying to force an intelligent interest. "The same. Of course, he didn't stay more than a minute, just smiled at me and said he hoped I'd soon be all right and he was sorry about my accident. I was so steamed up I thought I wouldn't sleep a wink, but I dropped off the instant he had gone. Next morning the nurses said, 'Weren't you pleased to see your captain?' 'Captain?' 'Yes, the captain of the team. It was definitely not the Prince. And yet I saw him as plainly as I see you. He shook hands with me and said something nice about my try. He was real, and that's what a spot of head trouble can do to the best of us." Iris set her lips obstinately. "I thought you believed in me," she said, "but you're like the rest. Please go away." "I will, because I'm sure you ought to keep quiet. Try and get some sleep. Now I've got to think this out. If I let myself believe all of you, I should be afraid I was getting mental, and I'm not. Now take it easy." "What a soothing nurse you'd make. You only want a silly cap. Listen." Iris dropped her voice. "I'm extra in the dark because I couldn't understand these questions. Do you really know the language?" "Better than English now, and it was so elementary that even the Professor couldn't slip up. Sorry, but there are no holes anywhere. But you look all in. Let me get you a lifesaver." "No. Miss Froe promised she'd get me something, and I prefer to wait for her." Her defiant eyes told Hare that she was nailing her colours to the mast. Since he regarded Miss Froe as a kind of ghost, he did not think that Iris would derive benefit from anything she might bring, so he resolved to renew his offer later. Meanwhile, he could serve her best by leaving her alone. Just as he was going, he remembered something and beckoned Iris into the corridor. "There was just one bit I didn't tumble to," he confessed. "The Baroness spoke to the ticket chap in a dialect which was Chinese to me." "Then that proves they come from the same district," called Iris triumphantly. "But as we don't know what she said, it's not too helpful. Saloms, see you later." After Hare had gone, Iris crouched in her corner, rocking with the vibration of the train. It was clattering through a succession of short tunnels, and the air was full of sound, as though a giant roller were flattening out the sky. The noise worried her acutely. She had scarcely eaten all day and was beginning to feel exhausted. But although she was unused to being ill and was consequently frightened, she was far more alarmed by the jangling of her brain. She started violently when a nursing sister appeared in the doorway and beckoned to the doctor. She hardly noticed the relief of his absence, because her thoughts raced in a confused circle round the central instant of the blackout. "I was on the platform 1 second, and the next second I went out. Where did I go? Was the waking up in the waiting room and all those women and the fun little old porter real? Of course they were, or I should not be on the train. But I met Miss Foy afterwards. They say she's only my dream, so if she's a dream, it means that I've dreamed the waiting room and the train. I'm not on a train at all. I'm not awake yet. It was true. It would be, if it, oh, this is obviously a typing error. So if, it says it. If it was true, it would be enough to drive anyone mad. She resolutely fought back the rising tide of hysteria. But it's absurd. I am awake and I'm here in this train. So I did meet Miss Foy, and I'm up against some mystery and I don't have to fight a pack of lies. And I have to fight a pack of lies. All right, then I will. At this stage, her concern was for herself rather than for Miss Foy. She had been spoiled since her birth, so it was natural for her to be selfish. And because that self was a gay and charming entity, the world had united to keep her fixed at her special angle. But now her ego was getting involved with the fate of an obscure and unattractive spinster. Once again, she began to review the incidents of their meeting, and then suddenly her clouded brain cleared and a sealed cell in her memory became unblocked. The Baroness looked at her as she sprang from her seat. "Is Madame worse?" she asked. "Better, thanks," replied Iris, "and I'm going to test some English memories, just for a change. I'm going to talk to some English visitors at my hotel who saw me with Miss Foy." So that's the end of chapter 13. I'm going to read one more because obviously I'm quite behind in reading them to you. But I just wanted to say, I know it mentions that they're about Iris is being selfish, but one of the things I really like about Ethel Lina White as a writer, and I really love about Lady Vanishes, is it is about women's voices. It is about like this woman Iris who's going up against all these other people that are saying this didn't happen. What you don't trust yourself. Do not trust your own voice. Do not trust how you feel, what you think, because it's not true. When you have all these people against you saying it didn't happen, and that idea of the underdog, and that idea of particularly a woman's voice being disregarded, not listened to, even the case it's against the Baroness, against another woman. But I really like Ethel Lina White's way of saying that this kind of, because Iris is really doing the heroic thing, she really, this stranger she just met has disappeared. She doesn't know her very well. She's had one conversation with her, one tea with her, but it's the right thing to do because this person's disappeared. It's the right thing to do, to reach out and to be an active bystander, to do something, to not just let things happen in front of you, bad things happen without you trying to do something about it. So I really love Ethel Lina White for that. I really love this book for that. Anyway, so chapter 14, Fresh Evidence. Now that she was about to establish Miss Foy's existence, Iris began to wonder what had become of her. When she remembered her exhaustive search of the train, it seemed positive that she could not be there, but it was also impossible for her to be anywhere else. The corridors and carriages were thronged with tourists, so that she could not open a door or window to jump out without attracting immediate attention. It was equally certain that no one could make a parcel of her and dump her on the permanent way without becoming an object of general interest. There was no place for her to hide, nor could Iris conceive of any motive for such a course. In short, she was protected from any form of injury, accidental or incidental, by the presence of a cloud of witnesses. In despair, Iris shelved the problem. She can't be proved missing until it's proved that she was there in the first place, she argued. That's my job. After that, the others must carry on. As she remembered the professor's standard for reliable evidence, she felt she could understand a showman's pride in his exhibits. Her witnesses must satisfy the most exacting taste, being British to the core. The Baroness looked at her when she opened her bag and drew out her pocket mirror and lipstick. Although her detachment was complete and her face void of expression, she somehow conveyed an impression of secret activity, as though she was spinning mental threads. She's pitting her gain against mine, thought Iris in a sudden flurry. I must get in first. Directly she began to hurry, she went to pieces again. Her hands shook so that she painted her mouth with a streak of vivid red, more suggestive of crushed fruit than the crimson blossom after which the tint was named. Unable to find her comb, she gave up the attempt and dashed out into the corridor. Men stared at her and women muttered complaints as she pushed them aside without apology. As a matter of fact, she was hardly conscious of them, except as so many obstacles in her way. After so much delay, every wasted moment was a personal reproach. In her excitement, she could only see, a long way off, the blurred figure of a little spinster. She must hurry to reach it, but faces kept coming in between her and her goal, faces that grinned or scowled, the faces of strangers. They melted away like a mist, only to give place to other faces. There was a flash of eyes and teeth, a jam of bodies. She thrust and struggled, while her cheeks burned and a wave of hair fell across her cheeks. When at last she won through to the clearer stretch of corridor, the sight of the professor, smoking while he looked through the window, reminded her of the conventions. She felt ashamed of her haste, and she spoke breathlessly. "Do I look like a jigsaw? It was that devastating crowd. They wouldn't let me through." The professor did not smile, for in spite of a picturesque attraction, her wild hair and brilliant colour produced a wanton effect which did not appeal to him. Neither did Mr. Todhunter approve her, as he criticised her through the open door of his coupe. Although he claimed to be a judge of feminine charm, he was of the type that prefers a lily pond to a waterfall. He never lingered before an unframed picture, for he exacted the correct setting for beauty. Abandon was only permissible in a negligee, and definitely bad form on a train journey. Although he had often seen Iris when she looked like a member of an undressed beauty chorus, he had never noticed her until the evening when she wore a becoming frock. "Who's the girl?" asked the bride, as she flicked open the pages of a pictorial paper. He lowered his voice. "One of the mob from the hotel." "Help!" In the next coupe, Miss Roseford Porter raised her head from the soft leather cushion without which she never travelled. Her movement roused her sister from her doze, as she too strained to listen. Unconscious of her audience, Iris spoke to the professor in a high, excited voice. "Your marvellous witnesses have let you down. They were all telling lies, the 6 of them." He looked at her burning cheeks with cold concern. "Is your head worse?" he asked. "Thanks, I'm perfectly fine. And I can prove Miss Froy was with me because the English visitors from my hotel saw her too. We'll get in touch with the English council when we reach Trieste, and he'll hold up the train for a thorough examination. Oh, you'll see." I was thrilled at the prospect of her triumph. At that moment she seemed to see the Union Jack fluttering overhead and hear the strains of the national anthem. Yeah, this book is also, I think Ethel Lina White is kind of showing, because the professor, when he said before about very much like, there's a difference between being patriotic and kind of xenophobic, and Iris is taking that line of, I'm English, so you should just trust me, which I think it seems to me that Ethel Lina White is mocking that idea of, this English superiority. That's my opinion. It seems to be something that she's obviously mocking because, I just wanted to mention that. But that's not something, obviously, that I agree with. We are very flawed in many ways, the English. Many that we don't and need to admit to more. So anyway, sorry, back to this. I love the line as well, "Do I look like a jigsaw?" I might use that when my hair looks awful. Oh, yes. She seemed to see the Union Jack fluttering overhead and hear the strains of the national anthem. The professor smiled with dreary patience. "I'm waiting to be convinced," he reminded her. "Then you shall be." Iris swung round to find herself facing Mr. Todhunter. "You'll help me find Miss Froy, won't you?" she asked confidently. He smiled down indulgently at her, but he did not reply at once. It was a pause of deliberation and was characteristic of his profession. "I shall be delighted to cooperate with you," he told her. "But who is Miss Froy?" "An English governess who is missing from the train. You must remember her. She peeped in at your window and you jumped up and drew down the blind." "That is exactly what I should have done in the circumstances. Only in this case the special circumstance did not arise. No lady did me the honour to linger by my window." His words were so unexpected that Iris caught her breath as though she were falling through space. "Didn't you see her?" she gasped. "No. But your wife called your attention to her. You were both annoyed." The beautiful Mrs. Todhunter, who had been listening, broke in with none of her habitual languor. "We are not a peep show, and no one looked in. Do you mind if we shut the door? I want to rest before dinner." The professor turned to Iris with forced kindness. "You're tired," he said. "Let me take you back to your carriage." "No," Iris shook off his hand. "I won't let the matter rest. There are others. These ladies." Dashing into the next coupe, where the Mrs. Ford Porter now sat upright in dignity, she appealed to them. "You'll help me find Miss Froy, won't you? She's English." "May I explain?" interposed the professor, as the ladies looked to him for enlightenment. Iris could hardly control her impatience as she listened to the cultured drawl. Her eyes were fixed on the solid, fresh-coloured faces of the sisters. Then Miss Rose spoke. I have no recollection of your companion. Someone may have been with you, but I was not wearing my glasses. Neither was I, remarked Miss Flood Porter. So you can understand that we shall not be able to help you. It would be against our principles to identify someone of whom we were not sure. Most unfair, commented Miss Rose, so please don't refer to us. If you do, we must refuse to interfere. Iris could hardly believe her ears. But isn't it against your principles not to raise a finger to help an Englishwoman who may be in danger? She asked hotly. Danger, echoed Miss Rose derisively. What could happen to her on a crowded train? Besides, there are plenty of other people who are probably more observant than ourselves. After all, there is no reason why we should be penalised because we are English. Iris was too bewildered by the unexpected collapse of her hopes to speak. She felt that she had been betrayed by her compatriots. They might boast of wearing evening dress for the honour of their country, but they had let down England. The Union Jack lay shredded in tatters, and the triumphant strains of the national anthem died down to the screech of a tin whistle. She hated them all so fiercely that when the vicar's wife put her head round the door, she could only glare at her. Mrs. Barnes gave a general smile as she explained her presence. My husband is sleeping now, so I thought I'd run in for a chat. When we travel, I am first in command, which is a new experience for me and only comes once a year. She spoke eagerly, as though to justify her husband's weakness. Then she turned to Iris, who was following the professor from the coupe. Don't let me drive you away. Nothing could keep me, Iris spoke with bitter hopelessness. Of course you didn't see Miss Froy. Was that the little lady in tweed with a blue feather in her hat? Asked Miss Barnes. Why, of course I remember her and her kindness. We were so grateful for the tea. I'm actually going to read one more chapter, chapter 15. I've kind of got into the swing of it now. But I think at this point you can just see Iris's frustration that everyone who she thinks who should be recognising Miss Froy, should be helping her find out what happened to this woman, are all kind of not obliging that, or really kind of not helping. So, yes, chapter 15, transformation scene. Her relief was so overwhelming that Iris felt on the verge of tears as she turned to the professor. Are you convinced now? She asked shakily. The professor glanced at the vicar's wife with almost an apologetic air, for the lady was a familiar type which he admired and approved when it was safely married to someone else. The question is unnecessary, he said. It was simply a matter of getting corroborative evidence. I'm sorry to have doubted your word in the first place. It was due to the unfortunate circumstance of your sunstroke. Well, what are you going to do? Insisted Iris. Having made one blunder, the professor was not inclined to be precipitate. I think I'd better consult Hare, he said. He's an expert linguist and has quite a fair brain, although he may appear irresponsible at times. Let me find him at once, urged Iris. In spite of her haste, she stopped to speak impulsively to the vicar's wife. Thank you so very much. You don't know what this means to me. I'm glad, but why are you thanking me? Asked Miss Barnes in surprise. Leaving Miss Rose to explain, Iris followed the professor. Hare was frankly incredulous when they ran him to earth in the restaurant car. Bless my soul, he exclaimed. Miss Froy popping up again? There's something about that good woman that keeps me guessing. I don't mind admitting that I never really believed in the old dear. But what's happened to her? The professor took off his glasses to polish them. Without them, his eyes appeared weak rather than cold, while the painful red ridges on either side of his nose aroused Iris's compassion. She felt quite friendly towards him now that they were united in a common cause, the restitution of Miss Froy. The Mrs. Flood Porters didn't want to be drawn in, she declared, that was clear. But why did those 6 foreigners all tell lies about her? It must be some misunderstanding, said the professor nervously. Perhaps I... No, you didn't, cut in Hare. You are a clinking interpreter, Professor. You didn't slip up on a thing. Iris liked him for the ready good nature which prompted him to reassure the professor, because she was sure that he considered him privately a pompous bore. We'll have to play the good old game of spot the lady, went on Hare. My own idea is that she's disguised as the doctor. That black beard is so obvious that she's making it too easy. Or she may be pulling the train, dressed up as a ladylike engine. I'd put nothing past Miss Froy. Iris did not laugh. You're not amusing, she said, because you seem to forget that besides being a real person, she's still missing. We must do something. Admittedly, agreed the professor, but it's a perplexing problem, and I do not care to act without careful consideration. He means he wants to smoke, explained Hare. "All right, Professor, I'll take care of Miss Carr while you squeeze out some brain juice." He grinned across the ash-dusted table at Iris when the Professor had gone. "Have I got it right?" he asked. "Is this Miss Foy a complete stranger to you?" "Of course." "Yet you're nearly going crackers over her. You must be the most unselfish person alive. Really, it's almost unnatural." "But I'm not," admitted Iris truthfully. "It's rather the other way round. That's the amusing part. I can't understand myself a bit." "Well, how did it start?" "In the usual way. She was very kind to me, helpful and all that, so that at first I missed her because she wasn't at the back of me anymore. And then when everyone declared I dreamed her, it all turned to a horrible nightmare. It was like trying to explain that everyone was out of step but myself. Hopeless. But why have you to prove that she was there?" "Oh, can't you understand? If I didn't, I could never feel that anything or anyone was real again." "I shouldn't fly off the handle," remarked Hare solidly. "I should know it was a post-symptom of brain injury and therefore perfectly logical." "But you can't compare your own experience with mine," protested Iris. You saw a real person and mistook him for the prince, but I was supposed to have talked to the thin air. Well, the thin air answered back. I can't tell you what a relief it was when Mrs. Barnes remembered her." She smiled with happiness as she looked out of the window. Now that she was safely anchored to a rational world again, after spinning amid mists of fantasy, the gloomy surroundings had no power to depress her. The afternoon had drawn in early, so that the period of twilight was protracted, and it added the final touch of melancholy to the small town through which the express was slowly steaming. Whenever they crossed a street, Iris could see mean shops with pitifully shrunken wares, cobbled roads, and glimpses of a soupy swollen river through the gaps between the buildings. The houses clinging to the rocky hillside like tufts of lichen on a roof seemed semi-obliterated by the time and weather. Long ago wood and plaster had been painted grey, but the rain had washed and the sun had peeled some of the walls to a dirty white. Every aspect betrayed poverty and desolation. "What a horrible place," shuddered Iris as they passed tall rusty iron gates which enclosed a dock-grown garden. "I wonder who can live here besides suicides." "Miss Foy," suggested Hare. He expected an outburst, but Iris was not listening to him. "When do we reach Trieste?" she asked. 22:10. "And it's 5 to 6 now. We mustn't waste any more time. We must find her. It sounds exactly like some sloppy picture, but her people are expecting her home. They're old and rather pathetic, and the fool of a dog meets every train." She stopped, aghast at the sound of her choked voice. To her surprise, she found that she was actually affected by the thought of the parents' suspense. As emotion was treason to the tradition of the crowd, she felt ashamed of her weakness. "I'll have that drink after all," she declared, blinking the moisture from her eyes. "I feel all mushy, and that's absurd. Old people aren't nearly as pathetic as young ones. They're nearly through, and we've got it all to come." "You do want a drink," agreed Hare. "I'll dig out a waiter." As he was rising, Iris pulled him back. "Don't go now," she whispered. "There's that horrible doctor." The spade-bearded gentleman seemed to be searching for someone, and directly his glasses flashed over the young couple, his quest was finished. He crossed directly to the table and bowed to Iris. "Your friend has returned to the carriage," he said. "Miss Foy?" Iris forgot her repulsion in her excitement. "How marvellous! Where was she?" He spread his hands and shrugged. "All the time she was so near in the next carriage, talking with my nurses." "Yes," declared Iris, laughing. "That's just where she would be. The first place I ought to have looked in and didn't." Hare rubbed his chin doubtfully. "It's all very rum. Sure it's the right one?" "She is the lady who accompanied Madame to the restaurant car," replied the doctor. "A little short lady, not young, but not very old, with a blue feather in her hat." "That's Miss Foy!" cried Iris. "But why was there all the mystery?" persisted Hare. "No one knowing a thing about her and all that." "Ah, that was because we did not understand, madam," the doctor shrugged deprecatingly. "She talks so fast, and you talked of an English lady. Now the lady is German, maybe, or Austrian, I do not know, but she's not English." Iris nodded to Hare. "I made the same mistake myself at first," she told him. She looks anything, and she speaks every language. Come on, and you shall check up on her." The journey along the train was growing so familiar that Iris felt she could make it blindfolded. As she passed by the Barnes compartment, she peeped inside. The vicar looked grimly heroic, with folded arms and knotted brow, while his wife showed visible signs of strain. Her eyes were sunken in black circles, but she smiled bravely at Iris. "Still looking for your friend?" she asked. "No," called Iris, "she's found." "Oh, thank God." "I didn't like that holy woman," Iris confided to Hare as she struggled on again, "but her stock has simply soared with me. She's really kind." When they reached the reserved coupés, Iris insisted on collecting the professor, to whom she told her news. "I want you to come to and meet Miss Foy," she said. "She'll be thrilled when she hears of the sensation she's made." A desire to attract attention seemed a feminine characteristic, observed the professor acidly. Iris only laughed with excitement as her heart gave a sudden bound. "There she is," she cried. "There she is at the end of the corridor." Once again she was overwhelmed by the derided human element as she saw the familiar flat figure in the light tweed suit. "Miss Foy!" she cried huskily. The lady turned so that Iris could see her face. At the sight she recoiled with a cry of horror. "That's not Miss Foy," she said. So that is the end of chapter 15 of The Lady Vanishes. I'll be back with a video soon, reading some more chapters. I hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, I just wanted to say I will be creating more video content soon. And just quickly, I was just thinking, so I do love these. I do love quite a lot of 30s, 40s, 20s mystery fiction. P.G. Wood has various others of that era, but I'm also aware, I said this before about the kind of society that we were in, and how far we've come, but how far we still have to go with regards racism, colonialism, all of the things. So although I love these books, of course, going on about being English, what English looks like, of course, that's what am I trying to say? Yes, that doesn't mean I can condone everything in these books, but I think what The Lady Vanishes is really about, and what I really love, is this character who is young, who is flawed, and you can see Ethel Lina White was an old woman writing this, and the way that Iris kind of talks about, she said about old people not being as vital as the young. It's obviously like Ethel Lina White does not agree with that. It's her take on this kind of young woman, but the idea, I think, of a young woman standing up when something is wrong and trying to do the right thing, I really like, and I do really like Ethel Lina White's fiction. I think it is quite different for the time and feminist, and yeah, I'm an intersectional feminist, and yeah, so that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, so I'm going to finish now. This video is really quite long, but I'll be back soon with more book recommendations. I'm going to read more of The Lady Vanishes, and yeah, I hope you're kind of all doing okay in this really kind of difficult, tumultuous time. I'm feeling more hopeful. I think watching some of the protests and seeing people kind of coming together to fight oppression, I think is so important. And yeah, I can't go out myself and join any of the protests, unfortunately, because I do live with my dad, who is very vulnerable, category 4 corona, but I am very supportive, and I think it's such a wonderful thing people are doing. So yeah, I hope you're all having a nice time, yeah, and well, as a good a time as you can, taking time for your mental health and for self-care. And I will, yes, I'm going to go back to reading more Angela Davis in my tent, and yeah, I will see you soon. Bye guys, bye.